David, let's start off with you. I mean, you've written a piece about this, and it doesn't exactly come. I can't even say it, trip off the tongue, does it?
I like to call it RCEP, actually. I think
RCEP.
it's easier. Yeah, RCEP's
sounds like
working.
A disease.
RCEP's working for me. They all sound like a disease. TPP. And so we've got to make a distinction about what is one and what is the other. TPP was considered to be a sort of a 21st century prototype for a new type of trade deal, right? And it was going to raise labour standards. It was going to raise environmental standards. It had provisions in there for protecting intellectual property. They were going to the countries who were involved were going to have to do certain reforms to their state-owned industries, all of that sort of stuff. So it was considered to be a higher level, and that's why the Americans could say yes, they were going to be able to write the rules.
Did not include
trade.
China, however.
And it didn't include China. Now, looks like TPP, for all intents and purposes, is dead. Donald Trump pretty much killed it yesterday. Speculation is it might come in some other form, but it's not going to be happening next week. So, well, let's put TPP aside and look at the only deal in town at the moment, and that is RCEP. Now, what is RCEP? RCEP is a lower level sort of trade deal. China is involved in it because it's based on a free trade agreement that was already hammered out between China and the ASEAN countries, those 10 countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Now, they've got a whole lot of noodle agreements. This is called the Noodle Bowl. They've got ones with Australia. They've got FTAs with ASEAN and Japan. All the other countries who are involved, 6 others. What they're going to do is sort all of those out and bring them into one amalgamation. But the question is, and this is a question I think for you, is that, you know, what sort of impact would it be if they could actually achieve this RCEP deal? What sort of impact would that have on Asia and Asian growth? And then what about China itself?
Well, if we have such a large trade deal, of course it's going to have a big impact. And as you know, global trade is declining. Globalization is reversing, so a deal like that would advance things somewhat. But I think it's really theoretical at this point. Something like that is not going to fly. I do not see.
Why?
Because the United States is involved, and I think we generally see in the West a backlash against globalization. The white, blue-collar workers in the West have lost out. In the last quarter century.
But what about the chances of RCEP, though, being able to achieve an RCEP? Because we're going to have a meeting that's going to take place in Indonesia at the end of next week, where they're going to try and bring the RCEP regional accord, the Asian regional accord forward. What do you think the chances of being able to achieve that are going to be?
A bilateral trade deal between China and ASEAN is possible. I see that, you know, but it's to what extent it's going to impact the world, I don't see that, because ASEAN is a relatively small economy. ASEAN is the size of about of South Korea.
How about Asia?
In Asia, it really depends on China and Japan. If they can agree on to form some sort of a free trade area, let's say start with Korea, Japan, and China, I don't see that, because Japan supported the TPP because Japan want to kind of throw some barrier in China's trade growth. So I don't see that. I think that in the next 5 years or so, global trade is going to be in a lot of trouble.
Okay, but, you know, we had Shinzo Abe say that TPP was pointless without the US. Now,
that's right.
Okay, even if you have the Chinese in this RCEP, okay, they're maybe the second biggest economy, but I mean, per capita, nowhere near as rich as the US. Now, the point is that you need a rich country for it to be successful. You need the United States to make a deal work. But the problem is, if you get the United States, you don't have China.
Yeah, well, I think that it's not like it's not like the old game anymore. Who's in, who's out. We see a sea change in the West. It's the backlash against globalization. Politically, basically, the WTO, the rule-based globalization is pretty much dead. We're talking about going forward more like a deal-driven, which is Donald Trump's belief, and what he likes. Everything has to be deal-driven. So the world will slow down. Will be bogged down with all these bilateral deals.
So what do you think, then, is the opportunity, if any, for China to be able to, you know, assert itself in the region geopolitically, now that Trump has signaled that America is going to sort of withdraw economically?
Yeah, China can assume the leadership in global trade if it's willing to reform its economy. Basically, China is an investment-driven economy, means that you have to sell to somebody else. So even though you're big in global trade, but you are very vulnerable because you're not such a big source of demand. You need other people. Other people need kind of don't need you as much. So if China wants to advance global trade, it needs to reform the economy. It's been dragged down for over a decade. It's how to move away from investment-driven economy and shift the income to the household sector to have a balanced economy. Then China becomes the largest economy in the world. So we're talking about a new chapter in globalization.
You have said, and just as what I just said before the break, that Donald Trump is unambiguously negative to China.
Yeah,
Define your
right.
terms.
Yeah, I think that basically Donald Trump does not believe in rule-based world. So China has benefited hugely in the WTO system over the last 30 years and has become the largest trading nation in the world. Donald Trump does not believe that. Donald Trump believes that if you are gaining and I'm not gaining, then let's renegotiate. So that means that China will be subject to a lot of renegotiations with the United States. So we're going to see non-tariff barriers rising in the U.S. And that will encourage other countries to do the same. So for China, this is an export-led economy. This is very bad.
Basically, you're talking about tit-for-tat trade war.
Yeah, it's basically, it's not a rule-based system. So how could companies plan for the future? So just the threat of a retaliation deters companies from investing, from outsourcing. So basically, that's a big part of why China's FDI, the inflow FDI, is being declined.
But let's just face it. I mean, he's already backtracked, hasn't he? Obamacare, he's already backtracking on that. Hillary Clinton and the special investigations backtrack there. He's made sounds about perhaps he is a slight believer in climate change, so he could easily backtrack on this as well.
No, on the blue-collar jobs, I think he cannot back off because he won because of them, and so he would have to do something. Why he announced that the TPP was gone on day one. So I think that this is if he wants to get re-elected, he needs to do two things. One is on the trade side to show that he wants to help the blue-collar workers. The other is that he needs a huge infrastructure spending bill. Both are very negative for people like us because he wants to get money into the United States, so liquidity here will go down. Then the exports will go down. But the two things will hit us hardest.
So what about, so that's the trade story.
Yeah.
What about the sort of the geopolitical story? How do you think he's likely to behave in areas like the South China Sea where...
Well, people say that he'll take it easy here. I really doubt it. I think that a lot of people, strategic thinkers in the United States, believe that it's a mistake to get involved in the Middle East. Okay, so if Russia wants to fight, let them do it. So that kind of thinking is like to prevail. On the other hand, they want to be more dominant in East Asia because American superpower thing, it really depends on here. The savings, the production, all are in East Asia. This is the center of the global economy. So that is why I think that it's too early to say that somehow Donald Trump administration will be less involved strategically here.